We have clients who are not based in Florida or Texas who only want to advertise in Florida and Texas, right? That's where the future is. That's where the opportunities are. No one wants to advertise in New York, Chicago, New Jersey, Philadelphia, et cetera, right? If they're only focused on Florida and Texas, I would say the future is looking really bright for them. That's where businesses are growing. We don't see it stopping. And I think they're probably going to be in pretty good shape.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast. I'm your host, John Hayes, and my guest today, none other than my friend Jack Monson, who is the CGO of Thunderly Marketing, the host of the Social Geek. What does all that mean, Jack? First of all, hello, and thank you for joining me.
Good to see you. Yeah.
What is a CGO?
A CGO is something that we used to call Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and maybe a few other things combined, but it's really Chief Growth Officer. So the idea is someone who's watching the cash register of a business and making sure that we're growing, the business is growing, we're bringing in more clients, all of that kind of thing. So
okay.
That's what
and
I do.
You are the guy who brings in clients as well, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that, I see you as out there at franchise expos and conferences. And I mean, you're the rainmaker. You're making things happen, even though you've got great support from Scott White, Monica Fide.
Yeah, great team there. Yeah, we are out at all of the big franchise events because even in this digital marketing world where we live 100% of the time, there's nothing better than being in person with people in franchising. That's where relationships are built. We can get more into that if you want, but you know, as you know more than anyone, this is a relationship business.
Yeah.
This is not transactional. This isn't, hey, let's do a project and, we'll never work together again. We work with clients at Thunderly who Scott and Monica have worked with for 25 years. Mm-hmm. And some clients that I've brought on that I've worked with for close to 15 years. Mm-hmm. And these are not people who are in franchising for a couple of years and then they leave to go do something else. As you know, people come into franchising and they don't leave, right? There's something about it that just keeps pulling people back in. Yeah.
Yeah.
The good ones anyway, right?
Made me think about in 1995, Scott White bought my agency, and he is still working with at least one client.
Yeah.
Dwyer.
Yeah.
That goes back to 1988 or so when I first started working with Don. So,
and a lot of our agency team members were not even on the planet when
that's
Scott
the funny
started
thing.
working with those guys. Yeah.
Well, every time I go into the classroom, I'm looking at people. I don't know anything about my life is like ancient history. I say, well, I got started in franchising in 1979.
Right.
Whoa, this guy's old. I am old enough to be their grandfather.
Yeah, I tell everybody, be easy on me. I'm from the 1900s.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. So how was it? This is one little topic I want to talk about. Nobody grows up, unless you're a Titus or a Dwyer or a Rosenberg or one of the other legacy families in franchising. Nobody grows up and says, I'm going to be in franchising someday. And no mother ever tucks her baby in bed and says, honey, I want you to grow up to be a franchisee someday.
Although you're trying to change that with...
I am trying to change that. Definitely. Yeah. Not having more babies and tucking them in. But I wouldn't mind if my grandchildren discovered franchising in some positive way. How did you get into franchising? Everybody discovers it at some point. Says, oh, that's what that is.
Right. We all fall into it somehow. And like I said, you just keep getting pulled back in. I got into franchising about 15 or 16 years ago. I was working for an agency that was based in the New York area. And we had a couple of clients that were franchises. And we had a lot of other types of clients, but a couple that were franchises. And the guy who owned the agency said, I want you to go to this thing. It's called the International Franchise Association. And I said, that sounds awful. Why would I want to go to that?
Right.
And he said, no, you got to go. I hear it's good. I hear there's a lot of great brands that are involved in this organization. This would have been, 2008 or 2009.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll go one time, but I'm not going back. I'll go this one time.
Yeah.
And fast forward 16 years, and I've never missed an IFA. It's absolutely the best industry I've been involved in, and I've been involved in 2 or 3. And this is really where I think people come to stay and grow and move into other things like podcasting and video and educating people and that kind of thing. But this is something that I decided early on I was here for the long haul.
I always like to say that franchising is a community that's made up of hundreds of industries.
Yeah.
Even though we refer to ourselves as an industry, we are a tool that industries use to grow their businesses and to do wonderful things. But too few people understand anything about that. It seems to be, well, that's McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. Yes, it is, but it goes way beyond that today.
Right.
So
unfortunately, most of the media and most people in Washington, D.C. still think of it as McDonald's and Subway and Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. Well, they have the money and they bring the money.
Right.
It's these little emerging franchisors that I've worked with for so many years that don't have the money to go spend at IFA or spend on lobbying. So God bless those, the Kentucky Fried Chickens and the others, because we need them. But
KFC was emerging at one point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There was a day where they were emerging.
Yes. So what is it other than, we benefit from the relationships, because I've been at it since 1979 and discovered franchising by writing a book, which doesn't seem to be that seems opposite from what should have happened. Don't you write a book after you know all about it?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't, even though the media graciously said when my book came out that I was an authority on franchising, which only helped me build my business that was non-existent before I wrote the book, because I was a college professor and I had no intention of building my own business. I didn't know how to do that. I had no degree in business, nobody mentoring me in business, but franchising just fell in my lap. And then the great relationships of Don Dwyer, who I already mentioned, then on to his 6 children, who I've known for practically all of their lives, and then reaching to people like Scott White. We lived in Dallas at the same time, even though I started in Philadelphia. These are relationships that just don't go away. It's not just that we're sucked into franchising or that we can't get out of franchising. It's in our blood, and it just becomes part of us. And I spend most of my time now talking to people about how they can utilize franchising to grow their business. If they pay attention to what has to be done, they can do extremely well. Of course, a lot of people don't pay attention. They think it's easier than what it looks.
Right. We hear this all the time with franchisees that, they thought it was going to be easier than it was when they got into it, but they wouldn't leave it for anything now.
Yeah.
So we hear that quite a bit when we're talking to franchisees about their story.
So then how did Thunderly come about? Let's talk about that.
Because
it's only been about maybe a year in the last year.
Yeah. Scott and Monica were in business for getting close to 25 years. And I think they saw the future was not just one channel of marketing, but multiple channels of marketing. So long story short, they acquired the agency that I was a part of as president. And we spent about a year integrating everything and getting our teams aligned and also getting our clients aligned. I think the great thing that we've been able to do over the past year is say, you can do really well with public relations and you can do really well with paid advertising, but if you put the two together, they both get a lift. And that's what we're seeing now for a lot of brands, that at one point they were just a client that we did videos for, or maybe we built FranDev websites for, but now we're doing multiple things, and all of those things sort of help each other grow. And it's worth a lot more to a company to invest in, maybe I should say, diversify in your marketing portfolio and not just do everything. Here's a good example. 10 years ago, which that seems like, a lifetime ago in digital marketing, the majority of franchise development marketing was you had a website and you had Google ads. And if you had those two things humming along pretty well, you were doing very well. You got great leads. If you had a good salesperson, you were closing deals. And that was life for 15 or so years. Those things still work, but now it's not enough. You can't just rely on having Google ads because, unfortunately, prices go up every year, right? You can only spend so much money and get the same number of leads. And that's what we're seeing for the past couple of years is people's budgets are increasing on all of these paid ad channels, but they're getting sort of a flatline number of leads coming in. Mm-hmm. So that's okay if you've got a great sales team and you can do something to grow that, but where's that next generation of franchise owners? Where are they coming from?
Okay.
Are they going to Google and searching you out? Probably not. They're looking at all other types of content now. So we think we're not stopping at just videos and podcasts and PR and websites and things like that. We're looking for what's the next generation of owners? Where are they communicating? Where are they researching? Where are they hearing those stories of franchise owners? We want to be in all of those places because unlike the old days where everything was in one place, you could run some AM radio ads and get a lot of leads, right? Now we've got to be in 50 or 60 different places just to reach all of the people that a brand needs to reach in order to get the number of leads they need.
Mm-hmm. So before we go too far down that path, let's, what is Thunderly marketing? What does that mean, Thunderly? And what could you do for me if I approached you?
The main thing we do is find your best, most successful new franchisees. So there's a lot of places to get leads. You can spend a lot of money on ads. You can go to portals. You can go, have a great website and you'll get leads. What we like to do is target people who would be successful franchisees. So it's not about getting 1,000 leads. It's about getting 70 leads of people who would make great franchisees. Because again, getting back to the relationship thing, we're not in the short term. We don't want to sell a bunch of leads and then walk away. We want those same franchise brands to be working with us next year and the year after that and 10 years down the road. And if we bring in a lot of people who are not going to be successful franchisees, those brands aren't going to work with us very long. So what we do to find those leads is typically digital marketing. We do a lot of paid ads. We do a lot of earned or media outreach and media relations to try to get the story out. We do a lot of shared, which is a lot of social media. We put a lot of thought leadership out there for the brands. We have a lot of CEOs and chief development officers who we work with to make sure that their story is being told on places like LinkedIn and Instagram and other places like that. And then my favorite part, and I think this is where everything's growing the most right now, is the owned media category. So that's the content that you're not really relying on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube. It's your owned stuff. Going back to that first book you wrote, that was your owned media. You own that book. No one could ever take it away from you or change the platform. So we're doing a lot more in that space with video and podcasts, both video and audio podcasts. And of course, writing articles and blogs, because we think in the long run, rules may change for all of these other media companies, But if you have good videos and good podcasts and good articles and good written text that you've created, that's where we want to see all of our brands in the future, is in that owned category.
So give us an example of how you find the next best franchisee for my brand. If I'm a franchisor and I need to bring on 25 franchisees in the next 12 months or 15 months, how are you going to do that for me?
We're really relying on the curiosity of the next generation of franchise owners. In the past, maybe they researched a few websites and maybe some old publications. Right now, they're looking at all kinds of digital media, whether it's TikTok or LinkedIn or YouTube videos or reading blogs or going to companies' websites. So instead of a push approach, we're really pulling people in by creating good content, typically featuring successful franchisees that they can aspire to be like. So on a company's website or on YouTube or on TikTok, we're showing videos and showing stories of those franchisees being successful, showing people what they do all day. We found that that's the number one question that potential franchisees have. It isn't how much money am I going to make? It's what do I do all day? Do I have to make the pizza, right? Do I have to educate the kids? Do I have to take care of these people? Or am I running a business? Am I going out to get new customers and selling things? So really showing people what a franchisee does all day, that's really the best way to pull in people who want to do that kind of thing and who want to be successful at it. So we're putting those stories out in every place you can imagine, and that's how we're pulling in that next generation.
And the big challenge seems to be how to get their attention. So my students are 20 years old, 22 years old, 18 years old, sometimes younger because they start college while they're still in high school. And I always enjoy that. And they are inquisitive, but it seems like they, like the rest of us, we seem to do the same thing over and over and over, whatever suits us. It used to be Facebook, maybe for many people still is Facebook, but probably more of the social media like TikTok and Instagram is where young people are living. But there's so much on there that getting someone's attention to break down something as not really complicated, but not easy to grasp it, the word franchising. What do you got to do short of taking your clothes off to get their attention?
Well, sometimes that helps.
Yeah, not in my case.
We'll save that for another episode. But
yeah, right.
I think the good news is most of these platforms, particularly TikTok and LinkedIn, and to some extent Meta, they're actually helping us with the way that they've changed how they're using AI to show content, specifically video, to people who would be most interested in your videos. For a long time, both on the paid side and the organic side, we were all trying to figure out the targeting, right? And we were all trying to figure out the algorithm and how can we target these ads so it hits a certain demographic who lives in a certain place and has a certain amount of money and they have certain lifestyles or things they like to do. That worked for a decade or two. And now we've all but thrown that out the window in favor of having great content that those platforms like TikTok will say, okay, this content will match up with these people who typically like similar content. And the good news is for anyone trying to sell a franchise or even get attention for people who might be interested in franchising, the good news is there's a lot of people on these platforms right now who are looking for thought leadership when it comes to business and business ownership and entrepreneurship. I think someday we're going to figure out that the guy who figured this out more faster than anyone, or at least louder than anyone, is Gary Vee, right? Because he and Simon Sinek and some other people have sort of started this whole generation of thought leaders and business influencers on TikTok and Instagram. And it's those people who've been following Gary and Simon and a few others for, the past few years. It's those people who will most likely be served up your franchise development stories with you and your franchisee and your founder, whatever the case may be. So, thanks to those guys for really taking social media from, being all about entertainment and movies and things and music and things like that, and really bringing in sort of a whole class of a business element into those stories, because we find more and more it's someone who's watching our clients' videos. It's somebody who already follows Gary Vee and all of those other entrepreneurial influencers. And that's been a really interesting thing to watch evolve over the past few years.
So are you saying that the next best franchisees are Gary Vee fans?
I would absolutely say so. What I don't want is someone who spends their day binge watching, dramas on Netflix, or someone who is, just watching a bunch of music videos all day of whoever the latest, hottest artist is. We want people who aspire to do well and become an entrepreneur. And you can love or hate a Gary Vee, but he's got the right message for a whole generation, and a lot of it is, get up, get out there and start hustling. That whole side hustle culture, I think has, even if someone isn't getting rich with their side hustle, it's at least got them thinking, am I going to play video games and, things like that all day, or am I going to go out and try to grow my business and in doing so, grow myself?
So probably a third of my students have side hustles, which is
Love it.
300% more than when I was in college. We had jobs, but we didn't have side hustles, where this was mine and we were making money out of it. But I've also discovered that my students don't know Gary Vee.
That's
So this
really
is
interesting.
these are the Gen Zs.
So they're
So
a little young for Gary Vee. Okay.
yeah,
So yeah, who's the next Gary Vee? Well,
you don't know who that is.
there's a whole series of influencers and, bro podcasters and people like that are being followed right now. And I think that's good. I think it's great that people are following more people like that who do have a side hustle mentality.
Yeah.
And again, just, more country artists and hip hop artists and pop artists and things like that.
So I was speaking with an emerging franchisor this morning, who was talking to me about Titus Center, and her goal, she's the CEO, founder, she's in charge of franchise development, which I think is a good idea particularly when you don't have any franchisees.
Yeah.
She actually has
brand.
sold 2. She had 3 people come to Discovery Day so far, and she sold her first one in Boca Raton, Florida, and she sold the second and third to a franchisee or someone who will become her franchisee in Houston, Texas. So in talking about her ad spend or lead spend, talking about her desire to not go too fast, but to keep developing franchisees, she wants to specialize in Florida and in Texas, which are the 2 best states for franchise. So how do you solve a problem for a franchisor like that? Whether it's Florida or Texas, doesn't matter. They've got 2 states, 1 state, 4 states. They only want leads from those states. So how do you do that today?
That's actually very easy. We have clients who are not based in Florida or Texas who only want to advertise in Florida and Texas, right? That's where the future is. That's where the opportunities are. No one wants to advertise in New York, Chicago, New Jersey, Philadelphia, et cetera, right? So if they're only focused on Florida and Texas, I would say the future is looking really bright for them. That's where businesses are growing. We don't see it stopping. And I think they're probably going to be in pretty good shape. We typically recommend and this is very different than a lot of other marketing agencies. We don't recommend advertising to 48 states for a franchise development deal. We see that in this industry still. It might surprise you, but we do see other agencies who are really more interested in how much money they're spending because they're taking a cut of it than how many great qualified leads they're getting for their clients. So we see a lot of agencies who are advertising to, anyone over the age of 18 in North America. And that's just an absolute waste of money.
Yeah.
We typically recommend, especially when someone's just starting, we recommend pick 6 markets, right? Maybe it's Dallas, Houston, Austin, Atlanta, Miami, whatever. Pick 6 markets. And let's focus all of your ad dollars in those 6 markets. If we happen to get a lead that's, visiting from Ohio, terrific, right? But especially if it aligns with your growth goals, and I don't know too many people who are still, selling franchises in Seattle when they're based in Florida, but some have done that in the past. Especially if it aligns with your growth goals, let's focus on a handful of DMAs or a couple of states and really saturate those places with your advertising. Along with, let's really hit those places hard with earned media and social media and anything else that the client's interested in doing. And really, really saturate a market before we start moving into, okay, now let's look at Ohio and, other places. So I think focusing your dollars along with focusing your message and focusing who you want to be as your franchisee, it sounds like you've got a good, successful future franchisor there you're working with.
Yeah. So let's, I want to follow that a little bit further. So you can go to a franchise expo, let's say in Fort Lauderdale, and you'll probably get primarily 99% Florida leads. That would be great. But there's only one expo a year, and it brings in a smaller number of people than expos used to bring in years ago, because there is, after all, the internet out there, lots of distractions. You could do some work through publications, really old school, trying to get into print. Some people still do that. I don't think that's a bad way to go. It used to be the primary way to go.
Sure.
You can do radio and television in Florida, but everybody's focus is, well, let's do social media. But now we're back into that. There's so much on social media and the scroll. How do you make sure that best new franchisee of the future stops on you and listens to what you've got to say to help this franchisor get another lead out of Florida or Texas?
It's really no different than radio advertising 20 years ago or having a story in print media 40 years ago. You still have to get their attention, right? It's still about having great content and having a good hook. The hook or the headline is probably the most important thing, because if they miss that while they're scrolling through, you've lost them forever. You could have the best message and the best opportunity ever, but if they don't see it, it doesn't matter. So having that great headline, having great content written by someone who knows what they're doing, because we do see a lot of that where people are just, well, I can make a Google ad. Anybody can make a Google ad.
All right.
Probably not going to make a very good one, but
Right.
anyone can. So, look for someone who's experienced in creating good content, because as I said earlier, targeting used to be the most important thing. Great content now is the most important thing.
So are there some secrets to great content? Will you make sure, any guarantee that if I go with you, 50% of the people are going to see my message, whereas right now, 3% of the people see my message?
Yeah, you can't really guarantee how many people will see it, but we can make some assumptions based on size, especially when it comes to paid media. We can look at how many dollars does it take to get a qualified lead. And to me, that's really the goal of Thunderly and our team is to get a certain result and not mess around too much with vanity metrics like how many eyeballs did we see? How many impressions? How many
Right.
clicks did it get? There was a long time where that's all we could measure. Now I think it's more important to work with the brand and say, okay, we delivered all of these leads last month. Where are they in your pipeline? We don't just want to deliver a report at the end of the month that says you got X number of impressions and Y number of clicks. We want to know from the client the feedback on how many of these and actually who were they? Because we want to track back and see, oh, we didn't think that Facebook campaign did really well, but all of your leads came from Facebook. Terrific. Let's do more. Right. So something that I like about our approach, something else that I don't see a lot of out there is we're typically talking to the salespeople within a franchise organization. I want to get the feedback from the salesperson, not necessarily the marketing person, because the marketing person might be a little bit more focused, like we all were at one point, on those vanity metrics. I want to know from the salespeople, are you closing deals? And of the deals you closed, what did they like about your message? And why did they go with you? Because we want to take that and make more content just like that.
So one of the most disheartening things, particularly for me early on when I was in my own agency, is getting a brand coverage back in the day. If you could get the Sunday New York Times or any major newspaper, the Pittsburgh Post, if you could get into the Sunday paper, or if you could get a great radio program or CNBC specializing in business or franchising, and you get your client coverage and they get leads, but they don't know how many, and all they know is, and sometimes they jump the gun a week later, well, we didn't get any sales. Well, it does take 90 days to 120 to cultivate a franchise sales lead. But my point here is the disheartening portion of it was you got the leads. We did our part. Now you want to fire us because you didn't sell any franchises, but your sales team is not effective. They don't answer the phone, for one thing, and they don't know how to lead a lead through the funnel of what results in awarding a franchise at some point. How do you deal with that today with franchisors?
We have had very many very frank conversations with CEOs and chief development officers and showing them that here are the leads that your sales team got, and here's what happened with them. And unfortunately, there are a lot of not very good salespeople working for franchise systems these days. We see a lot of leads that never get touched. And I don't know, again, I don't want to get into a generational thing because I know a lot of young salespeople who are killers on the phone and just want to talk to every lead they can get their hands on. But there is this fear of engagement that I see with some salespeople out there right now, where they would rather look at a list of leads and tell you why they're bad leads and why this won't work than to dive in and start selling. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I love about the Titus Center is there is no great training ground for franchise salespeople right now in this industry outside of Titus. There are some great events from the IFA and Franchise Update that include a lot of franchise development conversations. But what the Titus Center is doing is really boots on the ground, hand-to-hand combat sales training, right? And I'd love to see more and more of that in the industry from Titus and maybe some other organizations,
Yeah.
because I think that's what this industry needs more than anything right now.
Mhm.
There's plenty of marketing out there. You can market all day. There's so many places you can market. You can get leads in so many places. It's an embarrassment of riches at some
Mhm.
point.
Yeah.
But there's not there is a lot of great sales talent, but there's not a lot of great sales talent that are using the right tactics, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I don't think it's generational.
No,
I think it's laziness, and I
there,
think it's
there are,
lack
there are
of
guys older
know-how.
than me who are terrible salespeople that
Yeah.
I've known for a long
Uh,
time.
but I'll tell you this, if I generated a lead for Dwyer Group, Don Dwyer and his team, or if I generated a lead for Ray Titus at United Franchise Group, those leads were going to be worked, guaranteed.
Right.
Whereas I knew with other clients, and I proved this because at one point I had a newspaper column. Now, I go way back into print. So this was in the 1980s. I had a syndicated franchising column in weekly newspapers and some daily newspapers as well across the country. They picked up my column every week about franchising. And there was a little box at the end of my column that said, send a self-addressed stamped envelope and $1, and I will send you some free list of franchises or some report about franchising. I had a nice stack of dollars to spend every so often. But then we would capture those addresses and phone numbers on a little lead sheet that we had. And I had a retired gentleman, Harry, who I'd say, Harry, I want you to call all these people. Give them at least 2 weeks after we send the report and find out, did they follow up with any of the franchise companies on my report? And of course they had. And guess what? 99% of them, maybe 95% of them, never got a return call from any franchisor. And that's still the case today.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if I were doing that all over again, we'd find out nobody picks up the phone and makes a call or sends an email or makes sure that they connect with what might be the next great franchisee for the system.
Yeah.
So I think it's just laziness, lack of motivation. You wouldn't have that happen at a UFG or at Neighborly today, previously Dwyer Group. So a lot of it is just in the leadership of these clients who you
It's all
serve.
in the leadership. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guarantee any lead that goes to those organizations you mentioned, I guarantee those people are going to get called, followed up on, and exhausted. And even if they go nowhere, they will be part of a marketing campaign at some point, and they will receive information in the future. I think one of the things that good sales organizations do well is staying with a potential client or a potential candidate over a long period of time. I think there's a little too much emphasis on this idea of personas, right? We want this person or that person or somebody else. There's also something that can be so situational when it comes to franchising. You know, there's so many people who maybe read your column back in the 80s, or they listened to my podcast this week, or they read something in, the IFA's newsletter last week or something like that. There's so many people who they really are interested, and I think they'd be a great franchisee, and they've got everything it takes, but the timing is wrong, right? They're going through something right now and they just can't make a change in their life, or they just got a better situation at their job, but that might change again in 6 months, right? Or in 6 months, maybe something in their personal life is going to change. So if we stay with those people, not from a harassing them as a salesperson point of view, but staying with them, engaging with them via email or text or any other kind of drip campaign, or getting them to follow along on social media and engaging with them on LinkedIn, or maybe through a newsletter, or maybe they subscribe to a podcast. I think there are so many of those people that brands have given up on as a dead lead.
Yeah.
That 6 to 12 months from now, their life could change, or maybe they lose their job, or maybe they decide to finally, get up out of their chair and go do something. So I think the idea of marketing to those people, even though we're not hitting them with sales calls every day, I think that's what we don't know the long-term effect of yet.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I know something about that because Don Dwyer called me one day and said, I want dead leads. And I said, well, what are you talking about?
I
He
love
said, how
that.
many clients you have? And I had like 25 clients at the time. And he said, I want to buy their dead leads.
Love
And
it.
I said, why would you want to do that? And he said, because I guarantee you they're not contacting the people and I'll get sales out of those dead leads. So I actually put together a dead lead program. This was in late 80s, early 90s, where if you gave me your dead leads, I could give you 25 other dead leads. And when I said to Don, you got to put some dead leads here. And he said, oh, I'll be happy to do that. But my dead leads are dead, deader than a doornail. They won't get a sale out of my dead leads, but I know I will get sales out of their dead leads. And he did. And United Franchise Group does the same thing. People go to expos and say, well, we only got 20 leads and we didn't sell anything out of the expo. United Franchise Group said, we only got 15 leads. We've sold 3 so far. It's just the approach and how these leaders do it. So I think that's interesting, but I want to move on to something else you mentioned.
Okay.
How effective is LinkedIn in generating franchise development leads today? Seems to me that ought to be hot. And maybe it is, and I don't know it.
It is, especially in certain parts of franchising, specifically with multi-unit owners. If you're trying to reach someone who already has 3 units of this brand and 2 units of that brand,
Yeah.
where else are they going to be right now? They're going to be on LinkedIn, right? They may go to some events. They may go to the multi-unit franchise show. They may go to some IFA events or something like that. But people who own a lot of businesses already, they're not doom scrolling, entertainment videos. They're not binge watching Netflix.
Right.
They're not, playing video games all day. They're on LinkedIn. The other thing that I love about LinkedIn organic, and we'll get to the advertising part of it as well, but especially organic LinkedIn content, like the videos that you post every day and the articles that I post and the podcasts that I post and the organic posts and blogs that my clients post every day. People who are open to investing in further franchises are going to see that material because the content matches what they like and they are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really kind of a unique place for that right now. Also, if you're working with the broker community and you want to stay top of mind with brokers, we could have a whole nother conversation about that. But if you do, there's no better place to stay in front of them than LinkedIn right now.
And advertising on LinkedIn, are there franchisors doing that successfully?
Absolutely, yeah. We're actually having very good luck with that last year and this year especially. It is very expensive, so you do have to have a decent budget. You can't throw $100 or $200 at it and think you're going to make much of a dent because your dollars don't go very far on LinkedIn compared to Google and Facebook and other places. But if you do have a decent budget, LinkedIn is definitely a place where you will get expensive leads, but higher quality leads, especially if you're going after multi-unit owners.
And what about a LinkedIn Live program that you invite 1,000 people to come and 100 say they're coming and 2 show up? But is there value in LinkedIn Live programming?
There's value in it in that you can record it and share it in other ways, just like you're doing with this podcast right now.
Yeah.
I have found over the past few years, especially post-COVID, going to live LinkedIn or other digital platforms during the middle of a business day, having a webinar during the middle of a business day. It's okay. You might get a handful of people, maybe the people who show up are really interested. So those are the ones I would really follow up with first. But for the most part, all of these live things during a business day are not doing as well as they did even 10 years ago. So we're recommending doing more recorded content, more podcasts, more videos, things that people will be watching on their time, not on your time. So we want people to go check these videos out, whether it's Saturday night or 2 o'clock in the morning, whenever they're researching and thinking about things. They're not really on the clock.
Mm-hmm. So you are the host of Social Geek. Tell us about that.
Social Geek has been around for 16 years now.
Wow.
We started when podcasting was really not cool. We kind of rode the wave. We're at about 1,200 episodes now. Currently doing about one episode per week. And then I've spun that off into some other podcasts that I'm producing as well. One called the Franchise News Podcast, which airs every Wednesday, and one for Thunderly called Franchise Freaks, which is something I really like, where we're interviewing our own team and our clients about what's working for them right now. So it's a lot more work than you think. And you know that from the podcast that you're doing. But when you look at it long term and you see all of the people who try a podcast or they get into a blog or something like that, and they give up on it after 6 months, that's typically what we see.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think anybody who really wants to get into this, stay in it for the long haul. You'll be really thrilled with the long-term effect of what it is. I love doing it. I love recording it. I love talking to new people as well as some old friends. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's a great way for you to build relationships as you have done. And after all, that's what this is all about.
There we are.
Yeah. All right, Jack. Well, that was great having a nice little conversation with you about the next best franchisees for brands and everything that goes into that. It's complex. Everybody's got to do their share. Not everybody does all the time, but that even makes the community still all the more interesting to us, and a great place for my students to end up. And I love it when they can get to meet you, and some of them, at least one of them, has worked for you along the way. Maybe more are coming your way. So hope that's the case. Thank you for spending time with me today.
You bet. I'll see you at a franchise event soon.
Soon enough, I think.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.